The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com.
And hello again, wrestling fans. It is a wonky week for me, but I want to welcome you to This Week in History. We are looking at the week of September 17th to the 23rd. Normally this would be on a Thursday, would have been on the 23rd of September, but I had a flood at my house and life has just been so crazy. So I want to thank you for joining me on this delayed version of This Week in History. Whether you're watching on Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or anywhere else you get your podcast from that you should be listening to, or watching on YouTube or Facebook. We definitely appreciate your patronage. Sorry for the delay once again. And you can always catch us on the Johners Podcasting Network and even download the app. There's tons of different podcasts to listen to. Over 40 channels, I believe, we're up to on the Johners Podcasting Network. And it's from the UK, Canada, United States, and everywhere else. So join us over there and, enjoy podcasting. We all enjoy wrestling. You got different genres that way. And as you also saw, I want to thank Coolbet. Stay cool, bet responsibly. Wanting to sponsor all our shows on the Scumbags Network. So thank you for joining us. We're delayed on shows. I get it. And we're going to try and get on track. I talked to Steven, and we're going to get the podcast going again also next month. So hold on, and we're going to get back to life as we now know it. But let's check in with Jonesy, who's been the one creating their list for today. He's in Niagara Falls. How are you, Jonesy?
I'm doing great. Great day outside. Fall is definitely on its way. You can feel it in the air.
Yeah, definitely. London, people who are local or, just been watching weather in Ontario, got a little drenched on last Wednesday, and basement started flooding in my neighborhood. So that was our delay, and then contractors galore. Saturday, though, I did escape and go to Strathroy for the debut show of Hammerlock Pure Wrestling. And definitely get out there and support independent wrestling wherever you are, not just in Ontario, but throughout the world. You know, the big guys have all their money from the corporates, but the hometown stuff is definitely where it's at. So if you get out there and support them, you might see them on the big guys shows eventually.
Mm-hmm. And some of the people that you see in the indie shows are guys that have already been there.
Yeah. Well,
so, you're not, when you go to an indie show, you're not getting all, guys fresh out of a plant or something. You get a mixture of, and it kind of reminds me when the minor league baseball was, you can see Major League Baseball, hockey, whatever. Some of their players are really good. Others aren't. It's fun to watch good guys and bad guys as far as their in-ring ability come together. And I always like the indie scene. And indie scene is the best for heckling.
Yeah, a lot of interaction going on there. And just say it, All Elite Wrestling. A lot of those guys, you got Dark Order, Evil Uno, and Stu Grayson, Orange Cassidy, MJF, and Sean Spears all performed here in London at different independent wrestling shows throughout the world, and now are on things like All Elite Wrestling or in WWE. So you never know when the next big star is going to happen. But we're here to talk about history. So
that's right.
September 17th through the 23rd of September. If you're ready, so am I.
All right. 39 years ago in Kansas City, Missouri, Ric Flair defeated Dusty Rhodes to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship for the very first time. 34 years ago, the WWF pairs Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan on commentary for the first time. They would go on to become one of the most iconic commentary teams ever.
Yeah.
One of my favorite commentating teams, definitely.
Yeah, I would. If there was a Mount Rushmore, I'm probably going to mention Mount Rushmore a couple times here. But if there was Mount Rushmores for commentating teams, you definitely have Bobby and Gorilla there. Probably having obviously King and JR, and then maybe even Vince and Jesse. Plus, then who knows who the fourth pairing would end up being. But they're definitely one of the top four or top three, definitely, teams in all of wrestling.
Moving on, 25 years ago, WCW presented Fall Brawl War Games. On the card, we saw Johnny B. Bad defeat Brian Pillman to become the #1 contender for the WCW US belt. Diamond Dallas Page defeated the Renegade to win the WCW World TV belt. Harlem Heat, Booker T, and Stevie Ray defeated Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater to win the WCW World Tag Team Championship. Arn Anderson defeated his four horsemen cohort, Ric Flair. And the Hulkamaniacs, Hulk Hogan, Lex Luger, Randy Savage, and Sting defeated the Dungeon of Doom, Kamala, Ming, Shark, and Zodiac. Wow, you talk about one side, and of course this was in a War Games match, you talk about one side, the names, Hulk Hogan, Lex Luger even, he's a pretty big name. He may not be the most likable, but Randy Savage and Sting. And then on the other side, you have Kamala, who's probably the biggest star of those of that team. Ming is good, but again, undercard guy. The Shark and Zodiac, rejects from WWF. Wow.
Yeah, good old Earthquake and Brutus Barber Beefcake. So, and it's all guys that Hogan worked with, and that's kind of the stigma that a lot of people put on the whole Hulk Hogan era, especially the beginning times before he went NWO. A lot of those guys that he battled, there's very few that were not opponents of his in WWE, and it's because maybe a trust issue or something, but he would always trust the guys that he already worked with as opposed to going against somebody new. I don't think he went against anybody new, maybe Luger when he turned heel, but also I think the first one was Sting, and that wasn't until I think Hogan turned heel that they finally had that matchup. And so it took a long time for Hogan to go against somebody that was not a former New Yorker.
20 years ago, WCW held their final Fall Brawl. 8,634 were in attendance, and only 75,000 homes watched on pay-per-view. The main event for that night was Booker T defeating Kevin Nash in a steel cage match to win the WCW World Heavyweight belt.
Yeah, who knows how many that was at that time. That was probably number 3, I would guess, of his 5.
Oh, okay. Wow. 19 years ago on Raw is War, the Dudley Boys defeated the Brothers of Destruction, Undertaker and Kane, to win the WWF Tag Team Championship. 15 years ago, Ring of Honor presented Glory by Honor 4. The show is noted for the return of Bryan Danielson after quitting the company earlier in the year. And Bryan Danielson would go on to defeat James Gibson to win the ROH World Belt.
Yeah, I believe that's Jamie Noble that would be that combination. So Bryan Danielson against Jamie Noble for that match.
14 years ago, WWE presented Unforgiven. The show featured the first match to use a newer version of the Hell in the Cell, taller and more spacious. And the final match of Trish Stratus as an active competitor. Johnny Nitro defeated Jeff Hardy to retain the WWE IC belt. The Generation X, Michaels and Triple H defeated Shane McMahon and Vince McMahon and The Big Show in the handicap Hell in the Cell match. Trish Stratus defeated Lita to win the WWE Women's Championship. And the main event, John Cena defeated Edge in a TLC match to win the WWE Championship.
Yeah, pretty good card there, especially seeing some of those names that are there and where they've gone since. And just with the next one, want to choose that one as happy 60th birthday to James Mark Cornette, aka Jim Cornette. That's another one where I was going to say with Mount Rushmore's, he's definitely on there as top 3 managers of all time. probably along in no particular order with Heenan and Paul Heyman. So you have a nice little write-up of Mr. Cornette's life there.
Yes, he broke in at the age of 14, working as a photographer, ring announcer, magazine correspondent, and in public relations. At 21, Cornette became a rich kid who was an awful manager who would get fired after every match. His fortunes would turn, however, in 1983 as he would become the manager of the Midnight Express. It was during this time he honed his gimmick as being loud and brash and brandishing a loaded tennis racket. He would go on to NWA WCW as a manager commentator, founded Smoky Mountain Wrestling in 91, and it would shut down in 95. Corny in 1993 joined the WWF and had a working relationship with them. He'd serve as a manager, color commentary, and booker. Later, Cornette would become the lead booker and part owner of the WWF developmental territory, Ohio Valley Wrestling, which was run by Danny Davis. He has been credited with developing Kane, D'Lo Brown, Sonny, Al Snow, and in the early 2000s, helped John Cena, Randy Orton, and Brock Lesnar. Cornette would continue in the business, and of course, it can be found on his podcasts, which he has, 3 or 4 of them?
There's 2. There's The Experience and The Drive-Thru. A lot of times he's either taking questions or reviewing shows. Kind of out there. I know our friend Steven is a huge Jim Cornette fan and even has the Jim Cornette merchandise to go along with it. He is definitely one of those polarizing people. You either like him or not. He, because of his Southern roots and old school, he is kind of a little backwards in some of his current politically correctness, shall we say, because he ended up saying stuff that was taken the wrong way and lost his job with the NWA. But then you have...
and basically those jokes he was making 20 years ago.
Yeah, and don't
and
age
fire
well.
him over that? No, they should suspend, sure, but fire? Come on.
Yeah, and then you have things like over in OVW, unfortunately, he has heat with guys like Boogeyman, who he definitely did not like that whole gimmick. He ended up slapping Anthony Corelli, a.k.a. Santino Marella. So there's a lot of personal animosity that way. So like I said, he's polarizing. He's got some rich knowledge and great ideas of how places should be booked compared to the Cirque du Soleil, Mickey Mouse, Disney World style of wrestling that certain companies are doing. But, at the same time, he's a little out of touch. So you got to take Cornette with the good with the bad. And I listened to his podcast as well, thanks to Steven giving that.
I would
advice.
definitely like to go through his house.
Oh, yeah. He's got definitely a lot of posters. I've also heard him on his podcast talk about the different dates, and he'll pull out a book during it and flip to the exact date, August 23rd, 1983. I was doing this. He's documented so much. And even his partner, Brian Last, will pull out a card from somewhere in the U.S., read what the card was without telling the location, and Corny can pick it up where it was probably originating from and what year.
Yes, he definitely has a great memory and about the history of wrestling. We're moving on now. September 18th, 65 years ago in Baltimore, Maryland, the Fabulous Moolah won a 13-woman battle royal, last eliminating Judy Grable to win the vacated NWA World's Women's Championship. Moolah would hold on to the championship for 28 years, and this championship would become the original women's title in the WWF after they split from the NWA. Because she had issues with promoter Billy Wolf, who who had plenty of stroke with the NWA at the time, Moolah was not immediately recognized as the champion. The WWF Women's Champion would serve as the company's oldest title until its retirement in 2010.
Yeah, and there's a lovely Dark Side of the Ring episode that doesn't put Moolah in the greatest of light. Ended up...
you know what? Similar to, say, Oprah, the kind of business that she does, there's certain things that have been very questionable about her over the years. To be a big mogul, unfortunately, there's going to be some shady stuff. And also the time. Look at the time, Moolah. I mean, you could get away with a lot more than you could today.
Yeah, that's for sure. And, different times and things don't age well, like we just talked about Corny.
But women's wrestling has sure changed over the last 30 years. Going from Moolah, and then 20 years later, you've got the Cat, Sable, and all of them. So 31 years ago, WWF taped the 28th edition of Saturday Night's Main Event. It would not air until October 13th. On the show, they taped a Brother Love segment that involved the blinding of Jake the Snake Roberts due to Rick Martel spraying him with Arrogance body spray. On the card, Randy Savage defeated Dusty Rhodes by countout. During the match, Ted DiBiase and Virgil sat on either side of a fan that was later introduced as Dustin Rhodes, son of Dusty Rhodes. After the match, the Rhodes family, Ted DiBiase and Virgil, came to blows, and Dustin was left in a bloody mess.
My boy, no. I always remember that Dustin being cradled by Dusty, and no, as they went to commercial.
Great stuff back then. And Hulk Hogan and Tugboat defeated Rhythm and Blues, Greg Valentine, and the Honky Tonk Man by DQ. 27 years ago, WCW presented Fall Brawl War Games. The show featured the final appearance of Ricky the Dragon Steamboat in WCW Ring. He was forced to forfeit the WCW United States Championship due to a back injury. Steamboat would be fired via FedEx, the good old WCW way, after the pay-per-view.
Shocking.
Oh, yeah. I bet you oh, man, you work for a company like WCW, you see a FedEx guy coming, probably start shaking in your boots. Johnny B. Bad defeated Lord Steven Regal to win the WCW World TV belt. Kevin Sullivan defeated Cactus Jack. As a result of the loss, Cactus Jack was forced to leave WCW. Steve Austin defeated Ricky Steamboat to win the WCW US Heavyweight Championship via forfeit. Hacksaw Jim Duggan defeated Steve Austin in just 35 seconds to win the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship.
Horrible.
That's right, Jim Duggan, yep. And Team Rhodes, the Nasty Boys, Brian Knobs and Jerry Saggs, Dusty Rhodes, and Dusty Rhodes defeated the Stud Stable, Terry Funk, Arn Anderson, Bunkhouse Buck, and Colonel Robert Parker in a War Games match.
Yeah, I remember the build-up on this one, especially, and it was kind of mirrored when AEW did Dustin and Cody, but this was when Dustin was turned on by Arn Anderson, and Dusty came to him and was like, "The Rhodes are family, and all I want from you right now is just a hug and a kiss. So seal the deal, baby." And they hugged and all that. And then they went to a bar and got the Nasty Boys to join their side. And then, if I recall right, Ming was also the bodyguard of the Stud Stable. And this one ended after the match happened. There was a moment where a wooden folding chair got used to take out Ming, or attempt to take out Ming. And it got cracked over his head and just hung around his neck because he no-sold the whole thing.
Yeah, I think he was wrestling with it around his neck for a bit, wasn't he?
Yeah, that was after the show because he wasn't part of that match. He was a bodyguard with the Stud Stable.
26 years ago on Monday Nitro, the American males, Marcus Alexander Bagwell and Scotty Riggs, defeated Harlem Heat, Booker T, and Stevie Ray to win the WCW World Tag Team Championship. 19 years ago, at an NWA TNA Weekly pay-per-view taping in Nashville, Tennessee, America's Most Wanted James Storm and Chris Harris defeated Brian Lee and Ron Harris to win the NWA World Tag Team Championship.
Yeah, the weekly shows that TNA had were just, I believe, a $9.99 pay-per-view as their TV show for 2 hours. And some of the guys that were there were former WCW guys and future WWE guys, because you had people like CM Punk come out of there before going to Ring of Honor and OVW eventually. You had Alexis Larhe, which was then Mickey James came from over there. And, they've had quite the history. It's just the bad management of the company, because to know that they've lasted this long through their history, going all the way back, 19 years, but they're a number two. Well, we're number two for a little bit, but now are a questionable number 4 company behind Ring of Honor. Behind Ring of Honor and AEW. But yeah, they have such good potential, but not able to cash in on it.
That's why sometimes just watch the wrestling and ignore the storylines and all the other garbage, because the X division, especially in its first 5 to 10 years, that division is amazing. Somewhere I have a DVD that is their top X division matches, and it's one of the best DVDs that I've seen. As far as every match is amazing.
Yeah, and that's the main thing that unfortunately some people get hung up on, depending on what they're looking for with their wrestling. A lot of times, even with the WWE and stuff like that, their storylines getting into the matches honestly suck. And sometimes the finishes are horrible. There was even a bad finish I heard from last night's Extreme Rules match. But between the bells, before those wonky finishes, there's some really great action, and people just need to appreciate that sort of aspect of the company, that whichever company they're watching.
And WWE is more about the flash than a lot of the other stuff.
Yeah,
that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the big sets and the professional look of the show.
Exactly.
16 years ago, WWE presented Unforgiven. Ric Flair defeated Carlito to win the WWE Intercontinental Championship. Matt Hardy defeated Edge in a steel cage match. Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch defeated Rosie and the Hurricane to win the World Tag Team Championship. And Kurt Angle defeated John Cena via DQ in a WWE Championship.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the world got graced with Kerwin White. But, unfortunately, with Eddie passing away a few weeks later, that saved Chavo's career from being Kerwin White.
Awful gimmick. 10 years ago, WWE presented Night of Champions. Mark Henry defeated Randy Orton to win the World Heavyweight Championship. John Cena would defeat Alberto Del Rio to win the WWE Championship. And Triple H defeated CM Punk in a no DQ match. And had Triple H won that night, he would have been forced to step down as WWE CEO.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that really fueled CM Punk's dislike, is everybody's thought of Triple H being over all the time, and they have a bitterness between them, just comments back and forth. You had Cody with his face mask at a time where he was actually really good and could have been pushed up to a higher level. And we're seeing it now in AEW. But, yeah, so much untapped potential there.
7 years ago at an Impact taping, Bobby Roode defeated Bobby Lashley to win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. September 19th. 23 years ago, WCW presented a Fall Brawl War Games in Houston, Texas. This would be 1998. Lord Steven Regal defeated Ricky Steamboat to win the WCW World Television Championship. Wait a minute, 98, that can't be right. I bet
Well,
you that's a little. I bet you that's 27 or 28 years ago.
1993.
There you go, 1993. So we'll just say 1993. Lord Steven Regal defeated Ricky Steamboat to win the WCW World TV belt. The Nasty Boys, Brian Knobbs and Jerry Sags defeated Arn Anderson and Paul Roma to win the WCW World Tag Team Championship. Rick Rude defeated Ric Flair to win the WCW International World Heavyweight Championship. And Sting, Davey Boy Smith, Dustin Rhodes, and the Shockmaster, Lucky Guy, defeated Sid Vicious, Vader, and Harlem Heat, at that time Cole and Kane, in a War Games match.
Yeah, I think one of the original advertisings for this show was supposed to be Road Warrior Hawk in that team with Sting, but he obviously didn't come, and then we end up getting Shockmaster and coming through the wall. And even though the gimmick here has him with that sparkly stormtrooper mask there, I think when the match actually happened, they had switched him over to being a clumsy electrician. And so he came in with a white shirt and I think a white hard hat.
Yeah, and it's too bad because that guy, I'm telling you, in my opinion, he had the scariest looking drop kick. I just loved his drop kick, how he just straight up and boing, like that guy that big being able to do that was worth the mission.
Fred Ottman is definitely a talented guy, and if you ever get to see him at a meet and greet, he actually does sell shirts, and they might even be on Pro Wrestling Tees. But he has the three faces of Ottman, and you got him as Tugboat, Typhoon, and then Shockmaster.
Yeah, I got to see him take on the Undertaker years ago at the Gardens in London. 12 years ago, Jerome Young, a.k.a. New Jack, missed his own retirement show due to an outstanding warrant. New Jack would end up being arrested a month later on aggravated assault charges after stabbing his opponent in a match over a dozen times.
Never saw that coming.
11 years ago, WWE presented Night of Champions from Chicago. Daniel Bryan defeated The Miz by submission to win the U.S. belt. Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre defeated the Hart Dynasty, Tyson Kidd and David Hart Smith. The Usos, Santino Marella and Vladimir Kozlov, and Evan Bourne and Mark Henry in a tag team turmoil match to win the WWE Tag Team Championship. And Randy Orton defeated Sheamus, John Cena, Wade Barrett, Edge, and Chris Jericho in a six-pack elimination challenge to win the WWE Championship. 7 years ago, at an Impact taping, Taryn Terrell defeated Havoc and Gail Kim to win the TNA Knockouts Championship. The Revolution, Abyss and James Storm defeated the Wolves, Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards, to win the TNA Tag Team Championship. And Low-Key defeated Tiger Uno, DJ Z, and Manic in a four-way match to win the TNA X Division Championship. Birthday, it's 36th birthday to former WWE sideline reporter, play-by-play announcer, and color commentator studio host, Renee Young. Before the WWE, she was born Renee Paquette in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. The former child model tried improv comedy and even moved to Los Angeles at 19, looking to break through as a comedic actress. After moving back to Toronto, she would work for Canadian cable channel Bite TV as a presenter for Rippin' It, Lippin' It, and would spend 3 years with The Score. As a presenter for Right After Wrestling, the post-show for Monday Night Raw, which later was renamed Aftermath, alongside wrestling journalist Arda, oh my God. Here, you say that word. Why can't I say that? Ocal, right?
Yeah, Arda Ocal.
Ocal. I know it says I there. I know it's an L, but I can't even. Wow, that's a hard one to pronounce for me. And former WWE referee Jimmy Corderas.
Yeah, she actually recently left, I think about almost a year ago from WWE, but she's also married to Jon Moxley, formerly Dean Ambrose. They just had a child. She put out a cookbook recently, and also is doing her own podcast called Oral Sessions. So come a long way, and not sure where she stands as far as doing stuff still potentially on occasion with WWE, especially with her husband working for AEW, or if everybody's speculation of her eventually working for AEW will come to pass. She might still have a bit of a contract with Fox, and that's where they were doing the WWE Backstage show that CM Punk was actually an employee of Fox at the time, and not WWE, even though they were criticizing WWE, and Booker T was on there and stuff like that. So, yeah, who knows where Renee will pop up next, but you can always hear her on Oral Sessions.
Moving on to September 20th, 36 years ago in Long Island, New York, 67-year-old Freddie Blassie would have his final match. He would lose to Captain Lou Albano, who was at age 52, all in the confines of a steel cage match.
Yeah, I can find any footage on that, so I just have this lovely picture of Freddie Blassie with Mean Gene.
Mean Gene. 28 years ago in Nagoya, Japan, Shinya Hashimoto defeated the Great Muta and ended his 40-day run as champ and won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. Hashimoto would break Muta's record with a 489-day reign spanning parts of 96 and 97. Moving on to ECW, 24 years ago, they presented As Good As It Gets from the ECW arena in Philly. The card is remembered for the matchup of Beulah McGillicuddy defeating and bloodying up Bill Alfonso. A lot of people say this is it's like a highlight in ECW. The backstory is more interesting than the match itself. The match really isn't very good, but it does show that Bill Alfonso, even though he was about to leave, was willing to put everything on the line, and that actually saved his job.
Yeah, Heyman did have a great way, and he still does, of creating good storylines, and that's what, as you pointed out, leading into that match. Now, like you said, some of it, especially with it being ECW, was garbage wrestling in a bingo hall, but if fans were happy with the final outcome and the culmination of the storyline between Fonzie and Beulah, well, great.
And the main event was the Gangsters, John Kronos and New Jack, defeating the Dudley Boys to win the ECW World Tag Team Championship. 24 years ago today, WWF presented One Night Only from Birmingham, England. The pay-per-view numbers were low as it was only available in the United Kingdom and Canada. The story behind this is Bret Hart used a clause in his contract to exclude U.S. viewers from being able to see the event. Kind of an expensive storyline to do it that way, but Americans had to wait to watch it on VHS. Hunter Hearst Helmsley defeated Dude Love. Bret Hart defeated The Undertaker by DQ. Shawn Michaels defeated the British Bulldog to win the WWF European Championship and became the first Grand Slam champion in WWF history, winning all 4 available championships.
Yeah, I remember actually recording this one off TV when it debuted. Actually, I just saw the videotape a couple of days ago before having to, unfortunately, remove a lot of my stuff thanks to flooding. But it was interesting that they had Shawn Michaels go over as he did. I know they were building up towards Shawn and Bret and the building of DX, because that was when Hunter, one of the first times that they put Hunter and Shawn together publicly. And I think maybe Rick Rude was his first appearance was there. But what the bad part is, and unfortunately with being in WWE and being in your hometown, Davey Boy Smith had an ailing sister at ringside, and he still lost in front of her instead of having that feel-good moment in front of your ailing sister. So, But it definitely created a lot of heel heat for Shawn and Triple H in the build to DX.
24 years ago in Kawasaki, Japan, Devil Masami defeated Yoshihiko Tamura to win the WCW Women's Championship. She would be the promotion's final women's champion, as the title was abandoned when the WCW GAEA Japan working relationship ended.
Made it so worthwhile for Medusa to show up in WCW and dump the WWE title.
23 years ago on Raw is War from Houston, Texas, the Rock and Sock Connection defeated the Unholy Alliance, Undertaker and Big Show, in a Dark Side Rules match to win the WWF Tag Team Championship for a second time. On the same episode, Vince McMahon vacated the WWF Championship only 6 days after defeating Triple H for the title. He also gets reinstated in the company by Stone Cold Steve Austin in exchange for Austin being the referee in the main event at Unforgiven that weekend. Also, Stephanie McMahon would make her in-ring debut in a intergender tag team match with Test and wins. 16 years ago on Raw from Tucson, Arizona, Gene Snitsky delivers his signature line, "It wasn't my fault," which referred to Snitsky hitting Kane with a chair, causing him to bump into Lita and causing a miscarriage and Lita to lose her expected child. Yep, that was a storyline. Also on the same episode, Christy Hemme wins the 2004 Raw Diva Search and $250,000. Carmella de Caesar was the runner-up.
Yeah, and Christy Hemme is going to be working with Gail Kim to put together an all-women's event for Impact Wrestling. So that's coming up. And she recently stepped away from wrestling for a little while as she actually gave birth to quadruplets.
Wow.
She's a mother of 5 kids in total, but 4 all at the same time. Then you go back to Snitsky, our greatest babysitter of all time, and you see this picture here. After he talked down to Lita, he'd actually turn around and punt that doll into the crowd.
Yep. And that's on the top 100 moments in Raw history.
Yep.
16 years ago at a SmackDown taping, Bobby Lashley made his WWE television debut, defeating Simon Dean in less than 3 minutes.
Actually, I remember that weekend because I think SmackDown was taped ahead of time before this aired. But then that same weekend, he was in London at the John Labatt Center doing a house show, and that was the first time I had seen him.
Yes, I was actually thinking that. And actually, Dean Malenko was there that day because I don't know if we were sitting together, but where I was sitting was right by the entrance, and in front of us was where Dean Malenko and those guys would sit to watch the matches.
Yeah, we were by the entrance, and I got a good shot, I think, of Bobby Lashley. I know I got a good shot of Carmella, I think it was, and even Batista at that show.
It's one of those cliches where if you've never seen a guy like Bobby Lashley live, he is much bigger than he looks on TV.
Oh, yeah.
The guy is just a walking wall. 7 years ago, TNA presented No Surrender. Sarita and Taylor Wilde defeated the Beautiful People, Madison Rayne and Velvet Sky, to win the TNA Knockouts Tag Team Championship. ODB defeated Cody Deaner to win the TNA Knockouts Championship. Beer Money Inc., James Storm and Robert Roode and Team 3D defeated Booker T, Scott Steiner, and the British Invasion, being Brutus Magnus and Doug Williams, in a lethal lockdown match. And AJ Styles defeated Kurt Angle, Hernandez, Matt Morgan, and Sting in a 5-way match to win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. 10 years ago, Matt Hardy is arrested by the Moore County, North Carolina Sheriff's Office after a search warrant executed on his house found that he was in possession of antibiotic steroids and ecstasy. One of my favorite combos.
Can always rely on TMZ for a good mugshot of anybody arrested.
8 years ago, ROH presented Death Before Dishonor 11. Adam Cole defeated Tommaso Ciampa in a ROH World Title Tournament semifinal. Michael Elgin defeated Kevin Steen in a ROH World Title Tournament semifinal. And Adam Cole defeated Michael Elgin to win the vacated ROH World Championship. WWE presented Night of Champions from Houston, Texas. Kevin Owens defeated Ryback to win the WWE IC belt. Charlotte defeated Nikki Bella by submission to win the WWE Divas Championship. If Nikki was counted out or disqualified, Charlotte would have won the championship. John Cena defeated Seth Rollins to win the WWE United States Championship. And Seth Rollins defeated Sting in his final WWE match to retain the WWE World Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah, soon after this, the butterfly belt would get retired, and Charlotte would be the last one to hold that. And Sting actually takes responsibility for taking the buckle bomb improperly and causing his own issues. Unfortunately, if you watch that after the buckle bomb, he tried to get up and couldn't. They tried to do an Irish whip and he couldn't. So, yeah, sadly his career ended, but, time off and being protected in AEW has allowed him to do, I think, 3 matches already with Darby Allin as a tag team partner, but they're definitely protecting him. But he's also 60 some odd years old. So I don't know. And
that's where, you know what? AEW, they got some good matches and wrestlers, but I don't give a flying fig about them because they're just doing the same thing that others have done, using old stars and way past their prime.
They know how to use their some stars to their best ability because you have people like the Brainbusters who are being there as managers. You have Jake Roberts being used as a manager,
and that's fine.
Yeah. But then you're now throwing Sting out there and allowing him to wrestle. Meanwhile, he nearly broke his neck in a WWE ring by doing an accidental fall. And now Tony Khan's just like, oh, do whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, they get to play by different rules. It's a happy 39th birthday to Dulce Maria Garvis Riveras, a.k.a. former AAA star, Sexy Star. It's a happy 46th birthday to quintessential stud muffin Joe Gertner. He was definitely annoying, but he was also entertaining. It's a happy 57th birthday to Scott Hudson. Hudson would start with the Global Wrestling Federation in 1990 before joining WCW as a play-by-play announcer. He would join the WWF following the sale of WCW, announcing with Arn Anderson during the Invasion angle.
Yeah, you only actually, I think, got to announce the one match with Booker T and Buff Bagwell because they realized Arn wasn't that great on commentary either, and Buff got kicked to the curb because he didn't have the stuff. So Scott Hudson's time was a little bit short, but he also had another career outside of the wrestling that he really wasn't interested in staying with WWE too long.
And it's a happy 63rd birthday to Martin Anthony Lund, a.k.a. the Enforcer, Arn Anderson. Wow, Arn's looking old there, but he looks like a healthy old.
Good old Marty Lundy. And he's actually been able to take a couple bumps, even though he can't hold a Coke can in his one hand still. And that's been well over 25 years that ability has eluded him.
Mm-hmm. 22 years ago at a SmackDown taping in Texas, Triple H wrestles 5 times on the same show. Vince McMahon puts Triple H on the spot as he had to win the best out of 5 matches to hold his spot at the upcoming Unforgiven pay-per-view 6-pack challenge match. The Big Show defeated Triple H in the Choke Slam challenge. Triple H would then go on to defeat Kane in an Inferno match. The New Age Outlaws defeated the Rock and Sock Connection to win the WWF Tag Team Championship. Mideon and Viscera, who was substituting for The Undertaker, defeated Triple H in a 2-on-1 handicap casket match. Triple H originally won the match, but Shane McMahon amended the rules, forcing Triple H to put both men in the casket. Triple H would defeat Mankind in a Broiler Room brawl. Chris Jericho defeated Ken Shamrock in a First Blood match. This would be Shamrock's final bout for the WWF as he left the company to resume his MMA career. And then Triple H would win the challenge because he defeated The Rock in a Brahma bull rope match, giving him the 3 wins necessary to remain in the 6-pack challenge at Unforgiven.
Yeah, if you listen to any of JR's podcast with Conrad Thompson, I was asked about why Ken Shamrock wasn't as big as he could have been, and a lot of it was down to commitment. He just showed up late or wouldn't show up, and JR's like, you have to decide. You're either with us or you're not. And after, I think, 3 strikes, they said, thanks for coming out, Ken, and that's why he did return to MMA.
Interesting. 14 years ago in Philly, Xavier defeated Loki to win the ROH Championship. 19 years ago, Ted Petty, a.k.a. Flyboy Rocker Rock, dies of a heart attack while traveling to an event in Philly. He was 49. 18 years ago, WWE presented Unforgiven. The Dudley Boys defeated La Resistance, being Renee Dupree and Sullivan Grenier, and Rob Conway in a 2-on-3 handicap tables match to win the World Tag Team Championship. Test defeated Scott Steiner. With the win, Test won the services of Stacy Keibler. Good for him.
His real-life girlfriend at the time.
Oh, wow, lucky guy. Kane defeated Shane McMahon in a last man standing match. Al Snow and Jonathan Coachman defeated Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross. The win gave Snow and Coachman the announcing spots for Raw, and no one won in that as far as the fans were concerned. Goldberg defeated Triple H to win the World Heavyweight Championship, and Goldberg's career was on the line. 17 years ago at a TNA Impact taping, Christopher Daniels and James Storm defeated Chris Harris and Alex Skipper to win the NWA World Tag Team Championship. 13 years ago at a SmackDown taping, Carlito and Primo defeated Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder to win the WWE Tag Team Championship belts. Poofy hair! 7 years ago, WWE presented Night of Champions. Some of the matches on the card, Gold Dust and Stardust defeated the Usos to win the WWE Tag Team Championship. The Miz defeated Dolph Ziggler to win the WWE IC belt. AJ Lee defeated Nikki Bella, not Belly, and Paige by submission in a triple threat match to win the Divas Championship. And John Cena defeated Brock Lesnar in a DQ in a WWE World Heavyweight Championship match. September 22nd, 25 years ago, WWF presented In Your House 10 Mind Games. Owen Hart and the British Bulldog defeated the Smoking Guns to win the WWF World Tag Team Championship. Mark Henry, in his in-ring debut, defeated Jerry Lawler. The Undertaker defeated Goldust in a curtain call match. And Shawn Michaels defeated Mankind by DQ to retain the WWF Championship.
Yeah, and this one, Mankind actually, or Mick Foley, just recently tweeted about that match being one of his favorite matches of all times. It was a different style than what WWE was doing at the time. And you also had Shawn Michaels able to adapt to any style. And in this case, instead of just the high-flying rocker style that he had, he was able to do Mankind's brawling style. And it's one of the first times they also used a table at ringside, and Mankind went through it. So if you see it, it's definitely a different style for Shawn Michaels. And once again, like I said, Mankind, Mick Foley says one of his favorite matches. Obviously, not anything like the Hell in a Cell that he had, but it's a highlight of his career.
24 years ago, WWF presented Raw's War from MSG in New York City. This was the first Raw show at MSG, believe it or not. The show was highlighted by two of Raw's greatest moments, the WWF debut of Cactus Jack and Stone Cold Steve Austin stunning Vince McMahon, planting the seed for the historic Austin-McMahon feud. Meanwhile, over on Nitro, the debut of Goldberg happened. He defeated Hugh Morris, and Disco Inferno defeated Alex Wright to win the WCW World Television Championship.
Yeah, that would start Goldberg's 173 streak. Of course, they didn't count the 3 losses he had in dark matches before ever debuting on TV. So he technically was.
Those ones didn't count. That was like preseason
Mulligans.
Yes.
And of course, he had the worst ever stunner given to Vince McMahon for the first time, where he kind of took it awkwardly and then convulsed on the canvas afterwards.
Yeah, the convulsing is, but then again, McMahon overacts stuff, and especially for that time, it just worked. And you know what? I don't think it would. Honestly, I don't think it didn't. That the stunner to me looked painful. Yes, it looked sloppy, but it looked painful.
Yeah, it depends on who takes it. And Austin actually took out all 4 McMahons with a stunner, 5 if you include Triple H, because even Linda took a stunner over time.
Oh, Linda. 21 years ago in his hometown of Armillo, Texas, Terry Funk defeated Lance Storm to win the WCW United States Championship. Funk held this belt way back in 1975 when it was known as the NWA Mid-Atlantic U.S. Championship. Terry would lose the title the next night back to Storm. 19 years ago, WWE presented Unforgiven. Trish Stratus defeated Molly Holly to win the WWE Women's Belt. And Brock Lesnar fought The Undertaker to a double DQ for the WWE Championship. 17 years ago, Raymond Washington Traylor Jr., a.k.a. the Big Boss Man, was found dead in his home in Dallas, Georgia. He was only 41. A little bit on him. He was born in Dallas, Texas, was a prison guard in Marietta, Georgia. He began working in Jim Crockett Promotions as an enhancement talent until head booker Dusty Rhodes saw potential in Traylor. He would be repackaged as Big Bubba Rogers, a silent but a violent bodyguard for Jim Cornette. He would leave and go to the WWF, repackaged as the Big Boss Man, and the rest was history.
Yeah, he had a really close relationship with Terry Reynolds as well. I think he gave her away at one of her weddings, and she took his death really hard. I still can't believe he was only 41 years old. He seemed like he was around a lot longer than that. So then you wonder, how old was he not when he started wrestling? Because it's like, wow, weren't you around forever? And kind of crazy. I always liked him from the moment I saw him in WWE. He was a little fat compared to and really sweaty compared to what he ended up becoming. And then, of course, that oddball tag team with Akeem and doing the Twin Towers. 2 totally different personalities, but they became really good friends and a good tag team. And then, ironically enough, in retirement, George Gray, aka Akeem, and One Man Gang, is now a prison guard himself.
Yeah, but Big Boss Man, he was so agile for a big man, especially when he would get tossed over the ropes or clotheslined over the ropes. I'm trying to, if that was a Royal Rumble or the one where he does it so perfectly. He like hits his back, then his face, and like it just he did those moves so well. 10 years ago, George Gonzalez, a.k.a. El Giante in WCW and Giant Gonzalez in the WWF, died due to complications of diabetes in his hometown of San Martin, Argentina. He was 44. Like, he lived longer than the Big Boss Man. Born January 31st, 1966 in El Colorado, Argentina, Gonzalez suffered from giantism. He would stand 7'2" by the age of 16. He was the tallest Argentine basketball player in history, making the Argentine national team in 85 and 88. He would be drafted by the Atlantic Hawks and would be drafted by the team in the third round in 1988. After a serious knee injury ended his basketball career, Hawks owner Ted Turner took a liking to Gonzalez, and after a year of training, Gonzalez made his wrestling debut as El Giante. Years later, Gonzalez would be giant-sized by the WWF and added a full bodysuit with airbrushed muscles and bushy hair patches that scared many children, including myself. Billed as 8 feet tall, he crossed paths with The Undertaker for most of his short career with the WWF. He would retire in 95. Yeah, they did a lot of wrong things with him in the WWF. His bodysuit, the airbrushing, fine, but the fur patches, especially the one on the crotch, it was just uncalled for. The having Harvey Wimpleman is good on a mic, but that's about it as far as representing a guy like that. I don't know. I think they needed someone a little stronger to be his spokesperson.
Yeah, I think so too in that regards. But at the same time, I think Harvey was to him what Tim White was to Andre the Giant, and more of an agent and assistant to him outside of the ring and in real life, trying to get him through different things that he needed to get done in life. And Harvey is a renowned errand runner. He still is doing that right now. He helped out with The Rock when he was young. So I can see why they put them together because of their real life connection, but on screen may not have been the best. But if he was helping him outside, he would be needed to do it for the ring management as well. But I also remember Gonzalez being on a couple episodes of Thunder in Paradise.
Yes, and I think he was on a few other things because the guy, you put he's thin enough that you can put him in a bodysuit.
Yeah,
and that was the thing with him, is he was very tall and had big hands in that, but he wasn't built very well as far as muscles and all that.
I wonder if he would have been brought in as the Yeti if he'd still been active instead of Ron Reese.
Personally, I think they should have he should have been a good guy really quick. Come in as a bad guy, be friended by somebody, and become a kid's character. Yep. The over friendly giant. Well, actually, that'd be creepy. The overly friendly giant in that costume. Anyways, 7 years ago on Raw from Memphis, Tennessee, Dolph Ziggler defeated The Miz to win the WWE IC belt. It would have been a happy 91st birthday to Thomas Charles Lasorda, a.k.a. MBL Hall of Famer Thomas Lasorda. And he was one of the ring announcers at WrestleMania 2 in 1986.
For the main event of Hogan versus Bundy in the steel cage.
Yeah, the blue cage of death. September 23rd, 29 years ago, WWF tapes the 12th edition of Saturday Night's Main Event. The show featured the formation of the Mega Powers with an awkward yet beautiful handshake in the premiere of Coco Beware's music video, Pile Driver.
Yeah, and that was when they were doing that and on a construction site, and Arnold Skolin trapped in a porta potty.
Like, look at the beef there. That's a lot of big arms,
including the boss himself. Vinnie
Oh, is
Mac
Vince in that
beside
picture?
Vinnie Mac is in between a Superstar and Morocco in the red
Oh,
shirt.
okay. Well, I thought that I'm trying to think of who I thought that was. His name will come to me at some point. Anyways, 27 years ago, the Universal Wrestling Federation returned for the first time since 1991. This 1999 card was called Blackjack Brawl from the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. The show would air in progress due to a baseball game running late. That's kind of bad luck for your first big event. The event featured a very abbreviated Herb Abrams, the UWF owner, and was voted Wrestling Observer's Newsletter's worst show of '94. On the card, there's lots of championships that changed hands. Dan Spivey defeated Johnny Ace to win the UWF Americans Championship. Missy Hyatt threw in the towel on behalf of Johnny Ace. Jack Armstrong defeated Mando Guerrero to win the UWF Junior Heavyweight belt. Little Tokyo defeated the Karate Kid, not the Karate Kid from the Karate Kid movie, to win the UWF Midget World Championship. Tyler Main defeated Stevie Ray to win the UWF MGM Grand Championship. Candy Devine defeated Tina Moretti to win the vacated UWF Women's belt. The Killer Bees defeated the new Powers of Pain, being Warlord and Power Warlord. Do you know who Power Warlord was?
No idea who Power Warrior was on that one.
All right. And they won the UWF World Tag Team Championship. Cactus Jack and Jimmy Snuka fought to a double countout in a lumberjack match. And Dr. Death Steve Williams defeated Sid Vicious by DQ to retain the UWF World Belt.
Yeah, this is kind of a train wreck of a show. I believe it is available on YouTube. And, so many titles where Herb Abrams had enough money to get all those belts made and run this show when he was spending all his money on blow hookers and yellow cowboy boots is beyond me. But, yeah, he was also a subject of Dark Side of the Ring. And this guy is just a train wreck of a human being and trying to run his own organization. Yeah, I think they may have gotten definitely two events, maybe pushing it to 3 before it all came tumbling down. And I know
Ran out of money for his boots and blow. 25 years ago on Nitro from Cleveland, Ohio, the Public Enemy defeated Harlem Heat to win the WCW World Tag Team Championship. 20 years ago, WWF presented Unforgiven. Christian defeated Edge to win the WWE IC belt. Rob Van Dam defeated Chris Jericho to retain the WWF Hardcore Championship. Rhino defeated Tajiri to win the US belt. And Kurt Angle defeated Steve Austin by submission to win the WWF Championship. 19 years ago on Raw from Anaheim, California, Kane and the Hurricane defeated Lance Storm and Christian to win the WWE Tag Team belts. 18 years ago at a SmackDown taping in Philly, Tajiri defeated Rey Mysterio to win the WWE Cruiserweight Championship. And 11 years ago in New York City, Amazing Red defeated Jay Lethal to win the TNA X Division Championship. And the end of the day, today would have been the 104th birthday of Rudolfo Guzman Hirata, a.k.a. legendary luchador El Santo, meaning the Saint. He is credited with popularizing wrestling in Mexico, much in the way Rican Duzen did in Japan and Hulk Hogan would later do in the U.S. And that is it for this week in wrestling history, which is compiled from the vast land of Google, Wikipedia, Jim Cornette, CagesideSeats.com, and most importantly, from the fans and journalists that had front row seats to history. And a big thank you always to our sponsor, Coolbet, Coolbet.com, and sportsbook betting and casino games. Stay cool and bet responsibly.
Excellent. Yes, always thanking Coolbet for being a part of our shows and keeping us going. And I want to thank you for being a part of this show. As I said, we're a little late due to my own personal issues going on with my flooding at my house, but we're going to get back on schedule with as much as we can. COVID things seem to be settling down, and regular life seems to be at least getting a better rhythmic schedule for most of us. As I said, we're going to get the podcast back. Stephen and I will be discussing current events. Jonesy and I talking about the history, and we're hoping to get back with the Fantasy Warfare tournaments going on. We'll see how that goes. And, of course, there's the Predictions League. I'm going to catch up on the pay-per-view from last night during the week and get all the points settled on that. So I want to thank everybody for joining us on YouTube and Facebook. I'm hoping to have this out on Tuesday morning at the earliest, or the latest, should I say, and listening to us anywhere on Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere you get your podcasts from. Buy our t-shirts over at ProWrestlingTees.com/Scumbags and, of course, download the Johners Podcasting Network app, where you get over 40 different podcast shows, interviews, views, games, you name it. We got it going on at the Johners Podcasting Network. I think that's about it. If I missed anything, we'll figure it out some other time on our next show and give shout outs to everybody that needs to do that. So stay tuned later on this week. Should be back to our regular thing on Thursday at noon. Jonesy and I will be back with the following schedule of the 24th to the 30th, I think it is, of September for keeping up with This Week in History. So thank you once again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.